Hey guys, and welcome back to Just Ask Jason, which is normally kind of a Q&A weekly devotional here at Berean. But this week we're not really going to be answering a question. We're just going to kind of be talking about a subject. This week I've been thinking a lot about change. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of changes going on here at our church. We're talking a lot about how can we reach out in the community better? How can we help our people grow in Jesus more? How can we really invest in the younger individuals in our congregation, in our middle schoolers, in our high schoolers, in our elementary schoolers? And those conversations have led to a lot of ideas for changes. And change is kind of a weird thing. Because we talk about people who are change averse, they don't like change, and then people who just love change, like they live for it. And I definitely fall in the latter category. But I think regardless of whether you like change or you are kind of suspicious of change, I think that everyone acknowledges there are good changes and there are bad changes. And it's just really a question of whether you think most change is good, which is the way that I lean. I think that most change is usually good. Whereas some people think that most change is bad and you really have to be careful and you really have to do your homework before you jump into something. And there's a place in the world for both of those kinds of people. I mean, God designed both kinds of people. But as we're thinking about change, like I said, I'm not really answering the question. We're just kind of thinking out loud today. I really wanted to think about what does the Bible say that relates to change? And what I've come to decide is that God is a God of change, but he is a God of necessary change. So God is a God of change, but God is a God of necessary change. I mean, look back at Genesis, for example. There was nothingness, and God looks out into it. And it's not that he needed us, but he saw this nothingness, this lack of form. And there was something in the character of God that said, you know what? I ought to do something about this. I ought to fill creation up. And so he reached out and he created time and he created land, he created water, he made the stars and he made the galaxies. And this act of creation was, in a sense, a necessary change. It was something that he had to do. It was something that was in his nature. God is a God of change, but he's a God of necessary change. As I look through the rest of the Bible, you run across some other examples of it. For example, for thousands of years, the nation of Israel existed with a set of rules that helped them follow God that we collectively call the Old Covenant or the Old Testament. And they lived under the Old Covenant for generations. But there's always something lacking. It was always kind of missing a piece. It was a good thing, but it needed to be improved. And so when Jesus came and died, he instituted a new rule book that we call the New Covenant or the New Testament. And that's what Christians follow today. This change was a good change, and it was a necessary change. But that doesn't mean that what came before was bad. Romans 7:7 says, "What shall we say then? Is the law sinful?" The law is just another term for the Old Covenant. Is the Old Covenant sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was had it not been for the law. For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, "You shall not covet." So Paul here, the author of Romans, is writing about an old set of rules, and he says, all right, guys, I want to clarify something. The Old Testament wasn't bad. It wasn't wrong. It was a good thing. It was a gift from God that made us aware of the things that we were doing wrong and helped us to live better lives. The Old Covenant was a good thing, but God had something better for us. So as I'm sitting here thinking about change, it kind of occurs to me that change is sometimes necessary, not because what came before was bad, but just because what we can do now is just a little bit better. I mean, businesses do this all the time. They might have a product that they're selling, they're making tons of money off of, and then they stop selling it because they realize, Well, we may be making a lot of money off it, but we can replace it with something even better that will make even more money from. That's what Taco Bell is doing right now. They're simplifying their menu, and I am heartbroken because I love me a beefy Fritos burrito, and they're getting rid of it. But they're doing it because they think, all right, if we get rid of this, we can do other things better, and we can make more money in the long run. They're changing, and it's a necessary change. It's an improvement in their eyes. In the same way, in our lives, in our churches, in our businesses, in our families, we have to make changes sometimes, not because what was before was bad or wrong, but just because what we can do now is a little bit better. But even in that process, we're kind of responsible to look at the past and to honor it. Taco Bell is honoring their past by announcing to everyone, hey, this is going away, so while you have an opportunity, come buy up some of your favorite things that are going off the menu. The Bible actually honors the past as well. In Psalm 81:10, the psalmist writes, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. Now he's speaking for God here. He's not claiming to be God. He's speaking on behalf of God. And he says, I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt. Open wide your mouth and I will fill it. And this is a reference back to the Exodus. So the people of Israel were living as slaves in Egypt, and God, through various miracles, convinced the Egyptians to let the Israelites go. And so they left, and then as they were wandering in the desert, and they wandered for 40 whole years. As they wandered in the desert, God brought them food every single day. And so the psalmist is referencing back to this and saying, God has done amazing things in our time, and we are in great need right now because this psalm was written in some time of trouble, in some difficult situation. But the psalmist is referencing back, even in the midst of difficulty, even knowing, well, God has done great things since then, he's referencing back to something that God did in the past and saying that was a good thing. And I think we have a responsibility as Christians to do the same thing. When we need to make a change, we have to acknowledge that what came before us wasn't necessarily bad. Now, if it's bad, call it bad. If there's something sinful going on, call it sin. But if we're making changes, for example, in our churches, then acknowledge the things that came before, the things that were built before, were good. They were good things. They existed for a purpose. They did their job. They brought people to Jesus. They were good things. But maybe now we can just do a little bit better by making a few tweaks, making a few changes. Like I said, I'm kind of thinking about this today because there's so many changes going on at Berean. And I'll admit that I do really, really bad at honoring the past. I'm such a change-oriented person that I just want to go for it. But I think it's worthwhile sometimes. I think it's biblical sometimes to slow down and to honor the past. Psalm 81 honors what God has done in the past. And maybe sometimes we should slow down and not only honor what God has done in the past, but honor what God has done in the past through the people that came before us. I think I probably need to slow down and honor the things that God has done at Berean before I showed up. And maybe there's some area in your life where you need to slow down and honor what God has done in your life or in someone else's life in the past. The way that your parents raised you. Maybe there's a few things you want to tweak. There's a few things you want to change with the way you raise your kids. But have you ever taken a moment to stop and to just honor what your parents have done and what God did through them? Maybe you're a leader in your church or in your business. Have you ever taken the time before you make a change to just honor what the people who founded your business or founded your branch or the people who were elders or deacons or ministry leaders before you had done before you ever showed up? I think it's worthwhile to take some time to slow down and honor those that came before us. And once we've made that honor, once we've made that tribute, once we've acknowledged what they did was good, and sometimes, when it's necessary, it's a good idea to change. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on Just Ask Jason, which this time was more like Jason musing. But at any rate, if this video was at all helpful, if it was interesting to you, if it made you think, if it made you change some things, or if you just like listening to me ramble, please subscribe to us here on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at Berean-Murfreesboro, Berean Christian Church-Murfreesboro. We would love to spend more time with you, and if you have an opportunity and you are in the Murfreesboro area, please come visit us on Sundays. Currently, we are holding services at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., and we are social distancing. We are wearing masks. Things are safe. We're sanitizing, all that stuff. We're being very careful about how people are entering and exiting the buildings. We love you guys. We're praying for you guys. We're rooting for you guys, and we can't wait to see you. Have a good week now. Bye.